Hey guys, this week we are bringing to you our top 10 dive sites of the South Pacific. Last week we did our top 10 anchorages of the South Pacific, but these ones are just dive site specific. We've been blessed to have been able to go all the way from New Zealand, all the way to Australia, through 9 countries through the South Pacific in our first season, and in that time we dove hundreds of dives, hundreds and hundreds of dives, and saw thousands of creatures underwater, and we have narrowed it down as a crew to bring you what we have decided is our favorite, our top 10 dives of the South Pacific, and I hope you enjoy them. Let's start it off with number 10. Number 10 is going to be Liru Cut, which is actually in the Russell Islands and Solomon Islands. It is right next to Karamulan village, which Chief Raymond had the bright idea many years ago, something like 20 years ago, that he was going to turn the entire area into a marine park, and it certainly shows. The moment that we got in the water next to Karamulan and all the surrounding dives, it just had some of the healthiest reefs and most biodiversity that we had seen anywhere thus far. But out of all those dives, right next door is Liru Cut. And Liru Cut is nothing more than a crack that goes through an island. And it goes quite deep. I'd say, maybe like 40 meters into the island. And the light just trickles in from above and just creates this beautiful scene of just tinkling light as you go through it. And it's filled with crustaceans and lobsters, and when you get to the very end of it, you can pop your head up and you actually can see up into the island, and you can see palm trees and stuff falling down into that cut. So I think just the lighting, especially on Liru Cut, just made it just amazing. At first when I'm diving, I always have my lights on, trying to film the scene, but I realized by just turning off the lights and just enjoying it for its ambient light was a much prettier scene than just having the lights on. So sometimes you can't improve nature's beauty, and that was definitely one of those moments. And right when you come out of Liru Cut and you go a little bit deeper, we saw some of the biggest, pinkest Gorgonian fans that we had seen. We spent a lot of time looking for pygmy seahorses there without being able to locate them, but still an amazing dive. And this one was just perfect for ambience and lighting, which is a videographer or photographer's dream. Number 9 is going to be the Clanwilliam Wreck in Niuafu, the Kingdom of Tonga. This wreck has got a pretty crazy story to it. It was a ship that actually was just in the harbor there, and it caught on fire, and they didn't know what to do with it, so they took it out to the center and just sank it right there while it was on fire. So it's sitting, I think, in about 25 meters of water, and it's been down there for a long time. Enough time that the reef is taken over, and so much so that you don't really actually see much of the ship. It just looks like reef and coral and rubble. So it's really beautiful. And I think what made this one special for me the most was the moon jellyfish. I've always been intrigued with moon jellyfish. You see them in the aquariums, the ones that usually put like black lights and they're just glowing. They're completely harmless, which takes you a moment to just be okay with that and to be able to swim through them without the worry of getting stung. But once you accept that you're going to be just fine, just swimming through a sea of moon jellyfish bouncing off you literally is just a really fun experience, and just beautiful as well. And just nearby around the corner is a famous dive called Swallow Caves as well, which again is a cave with really beautiful lighting and just a huge school of these little fish just teeming inside of it. So a really good dive right there. You wouldn't expect it because it's literally right there in the harbor next to Niuafu, but if you're there, definitely check that one out. Number 8 is going to be the custom shark cave dive next to Munda in the Solomon Islands. Our guide Brian was nice enough to show us this very special and very unique dive, because it's certainly one that we never would have found without a guide. So Brian from Dive Munda showed us the way on a map, and he actually took us there on land, and you actually hike your way onto this little island into the jungle, jump into this pit, and it goes down into this underwater cave system. Quite tight in some areas, and as you're going along you have to be careful not to stir up any of the sediment, because then you get blasted out, and there was a lot of sediment in there because sure that a lot of people don't dive this one. In there you had lobsters, you had crayfish, and once you get to the end, you finally start seeing the blue twinkling light coming through, and then it opens up and you're on this beautiful reef wall right outside on the other end of the island. So you actually dive through the island, and then that dive alone just on the reef wall would have been amazing enough. It's just absolutely beautiful dive. And jellyfish again, and as you come up there's these mangroves growing off the top that the light trickle through, and just jellyfish everywhere. It's just a beautiful, beautiful dive. So that one is unlike any dive I've ever done, where you have a cave dive and a reef dive all in one, with a little bit of hiking in between as well. Number 7 is going to be Poor Knights, New Zealand, which is off the Tutukaka coast in North Island, New Zealand. And Poor Knights is a pretty famous dive. It was the only dive in New Zealand that I had heard about before going to New Zealand. So when I got there, I knew I had to do it. But underwater, the cold water brings in a slew of huge fish. A lot of trevallies, a lot of kingfish, some of the biggest stingrays I've ever seen, blue mau-maus, and it was just very different. And it's a kelp forest. So just the swing and going with it, it was something different. And I really like Poor Knights. It's been a marine preserve for a long, long time, and the fish know it, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful place. So if you can ever make it to New Zealand off Tutukaka coast, definitely head out to Poor Knights and enjoy that one. Number 6 is going to be White Wall off of the island of Vanuatu, Fiji. This one's pretty out there. It's like one of the far up northern islands that a lot of people don't make it to. And even off that, it's on a far stretch corner of that island. We were lucky enough that as we came in, we were passing it, and we jumped off of it. And what White Wall is known for is white, fluffy, soft coral. And it looks literally like it snowed down there, or like Charlie Murphy had a party down there, because it's just covered in just beautiful white coral. And as you're descending, it starts at about, probably 20 meters, and so it just looks like this white, like you're skydiving into a cloud almost as you're coming down to it. Filled with a lot of little micro things, a lot of nudibranchs, little crabs. Saw a couple sharks on that dive. Honestly, I don't usually dive for coral. I like big things, and I like to see little sea creatures. I'm not one that's like, I'm gonna go dive and find pristine coral, but that one was, yeah, I mean, you couldn't deny it. It was just the best coral I've seen, just probably anywhere. So, White Wall, Fiji, amazing dive. Number 5 is going to be Taumaru off of Gizo Island, Solomon Islands. Taumaru was a World War II Japanese transport ship, and it got sank during the war, and they actually rammed it right into shore as it was going down. And it is 120 meters long, which makes it a massive, massive ship. So it's going to take you multiple dives to explore even a fraction of this thing. And inside, it's just a treasure trove of artifacts. You've got sake bottles, you've got ink that they use for dipping, they've got a tank, a motorcycle, and they've got shells, they've got everything right there, and it's just scattered across it. And you wouldn't think so, because it's literally just right off of shore, and it just kind of slopes down. So you can see it from the air, you can see the top of the ship. And the top of the ship, if you didn't know there was a ship underneath it, it looks like it's just a reef, because it fell on its side. So that whole top side has just become a pristine coral reef. The reef has definitely taken over this ship. And yeah, it's one of the most impressive big ships I've dove. So that's the Taumaru. Check it out. Number 4 is Marvins Garden and Marova Lagoon, Solomon Islands. Marvins Garden is special to us because we met Mervin himself, and he had been blessed with these 2 islands that were given to him. And his dream is to turn these islands into a dive eco-retreat. And he asked us if we would check out underwater and to see what kind of things we might be able to see, so he could market and advertise that one day. Marvin's Gardens was just this enormous wall, and on that we finally saw the elusive pygmy seahorse. Why it's so special is we finally, after countless hours of searching, scouring through these big pink Dargonian fans, we finally found the elusive pygmy seahorse. These things were only discovered in the 80s, and to finally come across one at Marvin's dive site was a real treat for us. And it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever tried to film underwater because it's macro. It's only like a grain of rice, and it's in this fan that is just swaying. So to try to keep it in focus as you're doing it is really hard. We saw a bunch of lionfish as well, and a lot of clownfish of all sorts of different species, including rare bonnet clownfish. So it was a really good dive site, and the anchorage was really great as well. We spent a whole week there just doing nothing more than diving our brains out, hanging out with our good friend Marvin. Number 3 is going to be the Coolidge Wreck off of Luganville, Santo Island, Vanuatu. This wreck has got a pretty crazy story with it. It's a World War II wreck, and during World War II they didn't have very good communications. They actually mined off the entire entrance into Luganville. So they put a bunch of underwater mines, and they had sent the word out that everybody needed to go around and to come through the back entrance into the bay. But unfortunately Coolidge didn't get that message, and so they came into the bay, hit an underwater mine, and you could say that we sank our own boat, unfortunately. As it was going down quite quickly, they rammed it into shore, and it sank right there, and everybody unloaded off of the boat. So it is presto against shore. I think the bow of it is only in 5 meters of water, and then it's just sloping down, and then the bottom of it, I think, is about 50 meters of water, so it goes quite deep. This ship is absolutely massive. There is no way you're going to be able to do this in any less than like 5 dives to even see just a fraction of it. Littered on top, you're going to find some artifacts. Now once you start penetrating inside, we found the toilets, which were funny just to be on like upside down on them. We also found these petrol tanks that bombers used to take on long missions, and they would dump them. We thought they were bombs at first because they have that shape as a bomb. And then finally there was missiles and stuff right off of the ship, and just a bunch of artifacts. But the one thing that we had heard of that we really wanted to see was known as the Lady. Because the Coolidge was actually a luxury yacht before it got commissioned into the war, and one of the few artifacts that showed its previous life as a luxury yacht was this statue known as a lady, which was this lady on a white horse that used to be in the ballroom, and it was still there, and it was deep into the wreck, and so we had gotten just like a little napkin drawing of where the lady might be, and so we penetrated it, and when we finally found the lady, it was like just a sense of pride that we found this thing on our own without a guide, because that's supposed to be impossible, they said. And even up shallow, the reef was beautiful. We saw a lot of nudibranchs on the Coolidge, and it's just a really amazing dive. And if you go there, you can actually dive that one right from shore, and there's this little dive shop that just fills tanks. So that's a really good one. If I went back, I would spend a week there doing nothing more than diving the Coolidge. Number 2 is going to be the bull shark dive in Pacific Harbor, Fiji. Now this one is the locals in Pacific Harbor knew for a long time that bull sharks roamed the area. They used to hunt them as they were competition for food, but a couple years back they realized that that natural resource was more valuable alive than dead, and now the local Fijians all work at dive companies showing tourists these bull sharks. Now, I'd seen bull sharks. I'd seen bull sharks before, but I'd only ever seen little ones. And when I first jumped in the water there at Pacific Harbor and got on this dive, the first one I saw, I swore it was a tiger shark. This thing was 3 meters and just had that big broad face and shortened snout, and it just has that girthy look to it. This is not a reef shark. This is an enormous bull shark. It was really cool. And what they do is they build a wall, and they put everybody up front, and they have these hooks to just keep everybody safe, just to kind of like prod off a bull shark that's getting a little too friendly. And just to see them do their thing is just an amazing sight to see. I was lucky enough, I went through the dive after, just like really carefully, and was getting bumped into by a couple bull sharks, and I found a bunch of bull shark teeth, which was really cool. And that was just an awesome dive. It was far exceeded my expectations of what that dive was going to be. And our number one and most favorite dive site in all of the South Pacific is Vertical Wreck, which is in Morova Lagoon, Solomon Islands. This one was a Japanese fishing boat that on its maiden voyage, so its first time out at sea, hit a reef. And then when they tried to pull it off of the reef, they tried to pull it backwards, and unfortunately, she took on water and she sank. But she didn't sink like a normal shipwreck does. Because there was a wall reef right here, it fell vertically, which makes her only one of 2 vertical shipwrecks in the entire world. Now you probably noticed on our list there's many different shipwrecks. I do like shipwreck diving, it's just unique and different. But this one was truly a sight to be seen. From the moment we came upon it, its bow was only 2 meters underwater. Just looking down on the shipwreck down to 40 meters to its stern was just amazing. And then just slowly sinking down it like you were skydiving down just along the shipwreck. On it we saw a lot of macro stuff, including nudibranchs, we saw long-nosed hawkfish, we saw a shark off in the deep, and we really took our time exploring it. And I think that probably why the vertical shipwreck was so much fun was just the journey to find it. We had only heard whispers and rumors of this wreck, and we don't think it's dove that often. And we actually had to ask a village, and only one person in the village had heard of it. It was so nice to come show us it. And it had a beautiful anchorage right next to it that we had a little bonfire that night. And it was just a happy moment and a happy scene of just finding the perfect dive site all to ourselves. Super impressive dive, and I don't think I'll ever see another one like it. So yeah, if you're ever in the area, definitely seek out the vertical shipwreck. So those are our top 10 scuba dives in the South Pacific. If you are a diver, I hope that encourages you and excites you to go check some of these ones out for yourself. If you're not a diver, I hope that even encourages you more to hopefully one day become a scuba diver, so you can enjoy this underwater world that we absolutely love and we love sharing with you guys. So I hope you guys have enjoyed our top 10 dive sites of the South Pacific, and we'll see you guys next week.